It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A digital identity card carried in every adult's pocket. The Prime Minister's plan, which he hopes will tackle illegal migration. Sir Tony Blair tried and failed to deliver an ID scheme 2 decades ago. The opponents to Sir Keir Starmer's version are already organising. Also tonight, a new low for online hackers, stealing the photos, names and addresses of thousands of young children from a nursery chain. The taxi driver who took nearly an hour to call 999 after driving the Southport killer to his destination apologises to the families of the victims. Put away your personal ambitions, the pushback against Andy Burnham from the Prime Minister and those around him over the challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's authority. We meet the men running the risk of torture and death to deliver food and supplies into a city blockaded by Sudan's civil war. The fans who paid the price for a 2-tiered ticketing system as the competition authority finds Oasis fans weren't given clarity on the costs. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. It is nearly 2 decades since Parliament first passed an identity cards bill. Then Tony Blair's big idea was derailed by a change of Prime Minister, followed by a change of government. Sir Keir Starmer is now resurrecting the idea for the digital age. He's expected as soon as tomorrow to set up plans for a compulsory digital ID card, which every adult would need to possess. The aim is to tackle illegal immigration, but the politician who has perhaps made the most running on opposing it, Nigel Farage, said tonight the state should never have that much power. Our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, has this report.
Your phone may become a form of ID under new laws. The Brit card will be a mandatory digital ID card system. Using a smartphone app, employers and landlords will be able to check someone's immigration status. But the Labour Party has been on a journey when it comes to this policy.
That's why we propose to introduce identity cards to use the technology of tomorrow, biometric cards with retina scans and fingerprints to ensure that we better identify and control who's in the country legally and who's not.
In 2005, under Tony Blair, Labour tried to implement ID cards unsuccessfully after concerns around privacy, and those concerns remain today.
What we've seen in countries like Greece and Germany, which have large underground economies, which have irregular migration, and which also have mandatory ID, is that there is no correlation between having mandatory ID and reducing irregular migration. But what we do know is that mandatory digital ID excludes people.
And more recently, in July 2024, the then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper insisted it was not Labour's approach and was not in their manifesto. But Keir Starmer has had a change of heart. 14 months into a Labour government, small boat crossings are at a record high, and the government is intent on reducing the pull factors for illegal working in the UK.
French have already said that the pull factor in this country is that people can get a job without having to show ID, and therefore it has opened the door far too easily to legal working. And so we need to disincentivise people coming to this country. Having a requirement to show an ID card at that point of employment is a critical way to stop that trail of people coming across into the UK.
New polling from the Tony Blair Institute shows 62% of the public support digital IDs, 19% are against them, and 19% don't know. If you break it down by political party, 78% of Labour voters are in favour of digital ID and 73% of Conservative voters. Whereas that falls among voters for the smaller parties, with Reform voters the least likely to be in favour of digital IDs.
Number 10 wants to be seen to be gripping the issue of illegal migration. But with no progress on small boats, Keir Starmer is under intense pressure to be more radical. And parties like the Lib Dems, the Greens and Reform UK have all categorically said they are against this policy.
This trade-off between freedom and security has clearly angered several political parties and perhaps some voters too. Over the last 20 years, our lives have moved ever more online. The one thing that hasn't changed is this debate is likely to be as contentious as ever. Mari Aurora, Sky News, Westminster.
And Murray is in Downing Street for us tonight. Well, I highlighted Nigel Farage's opposition a little earlier. So how much pushback is the Prime Minister likely to get?
Well, I think that's the key question, isn't it, Anna? Now, we know that Keir Starmer has a large majority in the House of Commons, and therefore, in theory, he shouldn't have any difficulty getting this kind of legislation through. The difficulty is this kind of policy, it really does split people ideologically. Not only are some of the smaller parties much more opposed to it, the Lib Dems, the Greens, the Reform Party. When you saw in that report the breakdown of the polling, essentially those voters are less likely to be in favour, perhaps because if you're more likely to vote for a smaller party, perhaps you're slightly more sceptical of large institutions, or kind of perhaps you're a little bit more anti-establishment in inverted commas. But I think also what's really interesting is how many Labour MPs might be concerned about this. Speaking earlier to the Home Affairs Select Committee chair, who was a Conservative MP, Karen Bradley, she said she was very concerned about a possibility of essentially this, if it's not done well, being potentially a Windrush scandal part 2, if something were not to be implemented properly. So there is a lot of concern. Now, the Conservatives have said they're not really in favour, but not really because they're actually against the policy, more because they don't think it will do anything about immigration or reducing illegal immigration. So their stance is slightly different from those fundamentally and philosophically when it comes to the Lib Dems, the Greens and Reform. But also, the important thing to an extent is some MPs will say to themselves, including Labour MPs, they don't have a mandate for this. This was not in their Labour manifesto for the general election. This was never promised, and no one in the general public has voted for this. And that may cause a suggestion of concern among some Labour MPs that might be naturally opposed to it, especially because a lot of Labour MPs were very opposed to voter ID when the Tories brought that in.
Murray from a very windy-sounding Downing Street. Thank you very much indeed. The personal details of thousands of children may have been compromised in a cyber attack on a nursery chain. A hackers group has posted images, it says, are of children from the kiddo nurseries on the so-called dark web and is demanding a ransom from the company. Well, the Metropolitan Police have confirmed they are investigating. Well, I'm joined now by our education reporter, Anjan Pirbakos. This is a new low, it seems, for the hackers. What do we know about the information that may have been compromised then?
So the information the hackers have put on to social platforms is their names, addresses, but also their families' names, parents' addresses, but also employees that work at these nursery chains. And they're all in the public domain, along with photographs of children, very young children. We're talking preschool, so children from the age of 6 months up to preschool, so 4 years old. So these pieces of information are now in the public domain and to be used by anybody who wishes to access them, which is absolutely horrific for families and parents involved in this situation.
Mm. And what response have we had then? What are people saying about this?
So we did speak to a cybersecurity expert, Graham Stewart, earlier on this evening, and this is what he had to say.
I've been involved in cybersecurity for 25 years, and this is the most depressing day, I think, of my job since I've been doing this. This is just indefensible. It's an appalling an attack, and it just shows, as your correspondent was talking about, just frankly a lack of ethics and morals, and to go after children's data. Yeah, I'm afraid this is a new low.
So we heard there that the expert has said this is a new low in his experience of 25 years of working in the sector. I went to one of the nurseries earlier today and I spoke to a parent, and they had been notified by the management of the nursery that there had been a data breach, but I'm not sure to what extent that information was relayed, because they seem to be fairly reassured. And we've seen that the Metropolitan Police have also given a statement with regards to the inquiries that are going ahead, but no arrests have been made so far.
Anjan, thank you very much indeed. The taxi driver who dropped off the Southport killer, Axel Rudakabana, and then drove away as he launched his attack, apologised to the victims' families today. A dash cam in Gary Poland's car captured images of the children running away alongside his taxi, but he didn't call 999 for nearly an hour. Our North of England correspondent Katie Barnfield has more.
In the back of a taxi outside the Heart Space, Axel Ruda-Cabana prepares to launch his attack. The driver of that taxi was Gary Poland, questioned today at the Southport inquiry about why he took 50 minutes to call 999 after watching children run for their lives. Gary Poland told the inquiry he saw Ruda-Cabana enter the building and then heard loud noises he thought were gunshots. He said he feared for his life, thinking he would be targeted, and drove away. Counsel to the inquiry, Nicholas Moss-Casey, pointed to dashcam video from Gary Poland's taxi that's too distressing to show, saying, "Do you accept that as you were driving away, children were fleeing? They were alongside your car. You could clearly be seen looking in your rearview mirror and more children were fleeing," to which Gary Poland agreed. At this stage, he didn't call 999 and instead phoned his friend Julian Medlock, who worked on the same street. In a transcript of the call, Gary Poland tells him he thinks people have been shot and says he's lucky it wasn't him. 3 young girls, Alice de Silva Aguiar, Bebe King and Elsie Dot Stankham, died from stab wounds in the attack last year, while 10 others were injured. Nicholas Moss-Casey told Gary Poland their families would want to understand why he waited so long before calling 999, even picking up another fare before he went home and made the call. In his statement to the inquiry, Gary Poland said he should have called the police earlier.
I regret not helping the children. Their screams were harrowing, and I still hear them when I think back to that day. There isn't a day that passes that I don't think about what happened and the what-ifs. I can only say I panicked and fled for my own safety.
Nicholas Moss suggested the reason he took so long to call emergency services was because he was preoccupied with his own lucky escape and not what happened to the girls. Gary Poland replied that if he could change things, he would. He also said if he realised Axel Ruda-Cabana had a knife and not a gun, he would have tackled him instead, saying,
"I'd have got out and disarmed him. It's only a knife."
The inquiry will continue to examine the circumstances surrounding the Southport attack, asking how such a devastating incident that destroyed families and shocked a city and a nation was ever able to happen. Katie Barnfield, Sky News at Liverpool Town Hall.
The Prime Minister said today he wouldn't comment on the personal ambitions of the man who has made it clear he might want to replace him. Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has revealed in a series of interviews that some Labour MPs have asked him to challenge Sir Keir Starmer.
I was asked a direct question by a journalist and I gave an honest answer. And obviously that's been reported today. MPs were in touch with me. But let me also give an honest explanation of what I said to those MPs. It's not up to me. It's not my decision. That's a matter for you, for the party in Parliament. And also I said to them, and it's got to be about more than a personality contest. You know, the Tories were just constantly going through this at the latter end of the time that they were in government. It's got to be about a plan, a proper plan for the country and a proper plan to beat reform. And I think that's the big issue.
Well, the Prime Minister said today he wasn't going to get drawn into commenting on Andy Burnham's ambitions, though he did appear to link his potential policies and views to those of Liz Truss. But other senior figures in Labour believe this is a difficult moment for Sir Keir Starmer. This was the former Deputy Leader, Baroness Harriet Harman, speaking on our Electoral Dysfunction podcast today.
This was always going to be the moment of maximum danger. But I think that what people want is for Keir Starmer to succeed, and they don't want, I think, at this point, the turbulence of a leadership challenge.
The Palestinian president wasn't allowed into America to speak at the United Nations today, but in a video statement, Mahmoud Abbas told his fellow leaders that Israel posed a danger to other Arab states. He also called for further action over Gaza.
The time has come for the international community to do right by the Palestinian people, so that they may obtain their legitimate right to be rid of the occupation and to not remain a hostage to the temperament of Israeli politics. We will not leave our homeland. We will not leave our land. Our people will remain rooted like the olive trees, firm as the rocks. We will rise from under the rubble to rebuild.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent Mark Stone, who is at the United Nations for us tonight. So, Mark, what did Mr. Abbas need to do today? Because we know the Israeli Prime Minister is in New York and due to hold talks with Donald Trump in the coming days.
Yeah, I think we're at, I mean, we've been here before, but I think we're at quite a critical juncture on Gaza now. Mahmoud Abbas clearly not here because he wasn't allowed to be. But for a man whose speeches, and I've listened to many of them, are often very dense, he gets into the weeds. Of course he does. It is such a complicated, intractable conflict. This time, I thought he was much more succinct. There were clearly buttons he needed to push. He needed to differentiate his organisation, the Palestinian Authority, from Hamas. He did that. He needed to explain just how abhorrent the Hamas attacks on October the 7th were. He did that. He needed to denounce anti-Semitism. He did that. He needed not to criticise Donald Trump. He didn't do that either. So I thought that was very interesting. He needs Donald Trump on side. I thought it was a very interesting speech from, a man who is 89 years old, seen by many to be illegitimate because there have not been elections in the West Bank or indeed in Gaza for so many years. Nevertheless, I think we're at a very, very important moment. Donald Trump met Gulf and other Muslim majority countries, the leaders of those countries, over the course of the past couple of days. We get the sense of some genuine momentum, and there is discussion tonight, or rumours tonight, that Tony Blair could form a key part of some sort of transitional authority to govern Gaza in the short term once the ceasefire, any ceasefire comes into effect. Now, sources in the Middle East that I've spoken to tonight and a source within the Trump administration say that is not true, but sometimes these things are not true until they are. So watch that space. Listen to Donald Trump speaking in the last few moments with a very, very important point, saying that he has told the Israelis that annexation of the West Bank must not happen. That's important. Have a listen.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay?
Look, it seems that whether it be on Ukraine or on the Middle East, Donald Trump seems to have had some sort of massive change of heart over the course of the past week. Very interesting indeed. All eyes now here at the at the General Assembly on David Lammy, Britain's Deputy Prime Minister, speaking on behalf of the UK in around about, well, probably 30 minutes' time. So stay tuned for that.
We will indeed. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Now, Jaguar Land Rover says it's begun a phased restart of its operations following August's cyber attack. The company said parts of its digital platform is now up and running after the attack, which crippled the business. But while it says the foundational work of its recovery programme is now underway, production has not restarted. Denmark says it still doesn't know who's behind the drone flights which happened over 4 airports in the country last night. Russia is heavily suspected of being behind the incidents and a series of incursions into NATO airspace, but Moscow denies the claims. Meanwhile, Germany has accused Russia of using its satellites in space to chase away NATO satellites. Sky News has learned that the Trump administration is stepping in to try to stop FIFA banning Israel from international football ahead of the 2026 World Cup. There is pressure on football's world and European governing bodies to suspend Israeli teams over the war in Gaza. We also understand UEFA may soon make its own decision over a suspension. The Irish Foreign Minister Simon Harris says his country will continue to work closely with the United States despite the Trump administration's very public endorsement of Conor McGregor, who's been a fierce critic of the Irish government. Speaking to Sky's David Blevins, the former Irish Prime Minister said the relationship between the two nations is more important than any individual.
Conor McGregor represents the very worst of us and doesn't represent Irish values. So it'd be very clear on that. But We in Ireland have always found a way of constructively working with successive US administrations, and that's continuing. We also speak truth to our friends, and we do it in a respectful way. And when we agree, we say it, and when we disagree, we're not afraid to say that too.
So are you saying the relationship transcends whoever happens to be in the White House at any given moment in time?
Absolutely. I mean, the relationship is deeper than any one person. The relationship is hundreds of years old.
It must have felt a long way from the Élysée Palace. The former French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, instead found guilty of a criminal conspiracy and facing 5 years in jail. In the courthouse, with his supermodel wife, Carla Bruni, standing alongside him, he said the conviction was a scandal. Our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, reports.
Nicolas Sarkozy arrived at court with his wife. He looked stressed, the strain showing on his face. The prison sentence handed down is harsher than many had expected. Even if he appeals, the former French president will spend time in jail. The 5-year custodial term was given after he was found guilty of criminal conspiracy. He was acquitted on charges of corruption and illegal campaign financing due to insufficient evidence. As he left court, he continued to deny any wrongdoing, claiming the case against him was politically motivated.
If they absolutely want me to sleep in jail, I will sleep in jail, but with my head held high. I am innocent. This injustice is a scandal. I will fight till my last breath to prove my total innocence.
During his trial, he and his aides were accused of corruption, making a pact with the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi to receive funding for Sarkozy's victorious 2007 presidential campaign. The court heard that in return, Gaddafi requested diplomatic and business favours, as well as help to rehabilitate his image. A serial human rights abuser with links to global terror, the Libyan strongman had been isolated internationally.
It's a shock that a former French president is going to prison, because now he can go home today, but he will be summoned within 1 month by the prosecutor's office to be informed of the date in which he will go to prison, and his appeal won't suspend the sentence.
This conviction further damages Sarkozy's reputation. He's already been found guilty in 2 other cases and was stripped of France's highest award, the Legion of Honor. Now 70 years old, Sarkozy, who led France from 2007 to 2012, will begin his sentence at a later date. But the outcome is unprecedented. For the first time in modern French history, a former president is going to prison. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Sky News has gone on the front line of a new fight against famine inside a besieged city in Sudan. A group of volunteers are putting their lives at risk to smuggle food and medicine to thousands of people desperate to stay alive. The young men face torture and death in a region bombarded by drone strikes and shelling. Well, after 2.5 years of war, Sudan's map resembles a patchwork of territorial control. The army controls the capital, Khartoum, and most of the east. The RSF paramilitary dominates the west. And the city of Al-Fashir is at the centre of recent fighting, and its 900,000 residents are in a desperate situation. A network of activists who emerged from Sudan's 2019 revolution are working to get whatever they can inside. Their mission, extremely dangerous, slipping in and out of smuggling routes that rapidly open and close. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bahir, met the volunteers. Here's her report on them from North Darfur.
Donkeys, pickup trucks, and even on foot. Volunteers are breaking their backs and risking their lives to get food into the famine-ridden, besieged capital of North Darfur. We meet 2 food smuggling coordinators in secret. Young men tasked with making sure life-saving supplies reach families in Al-Fashir. Their phones won't stop ringing, and then the bad news arrives.
We just got a message from HQ that one of our guys smuggling insulin hasn't arrived.
He's likely to have been killed.
How many volunteers have you lost?
I can't give you an overall number, but this week alone we've lost 30 volunteers.
30?
Yes, 30.
Who's targeting them?
The Rapid Support Forces.
They take us to one of their secret storerooms in the market, where piles of food wait to be smuggled out.
This is flour, this is pasta, there's flour over there, that is sugar. This is from Libya, but we bring it in through Chad. And this is salt. We don't get much beyond the bare essentials, so people can eat and not starve to death. These supplies leave here by car and stop at different stations, then are moved onto camels, horses, before being redistributed again on foot. The teams will take the supplies to locations near Al Fasher and share their GPS coordinates with our teams inside the city. They'll wait a few days until it's safe and collect the supplies from the locations.
WFP aid trucks stacked with food have been attacked as they approached Al Fasher by RSF fighters upholding their brutal siege. This is the current state of Al Fasher's skyline, darkened by smoke as the RSF bombards residential areas with heavy artillery and drone strikes. No trucks carrying supplies of any kind can approach the area. Everything is now riding on volunteers to smuggle in food and medicine to save thousands of civilians eating animal feed to survive. Aid workers and the drivers of these trucks face the same dangers that volunteers face trying to get food into RSF-held areas and Al Fasher during the siege. But just the sight of these trucks, static, in the sun, brimming with food, shows how man-made this famine is. Back in the storeroom, they show us what happens to volunteers caught taking in food. The young men in this video are still missing. Just one group of many that have been disappeared by the RSF for smuggling in supplies.
You know you're going from one danger to the next. There's no guarantee you'll survive. There's about a 90% chance you won't make it. But that 10% chance means you can get supplies in and save the sick, the injured, the starving. If you don't do it, it'll be a slow genocide. So better to die trying. We have no other option but to take these risks.
These extreme conditions require extreme courage from young people committed to providing relief. Each life on the line is a life saved from this deadly, suffocating siege. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, North Darfur.
Well, finally, for many, it was the scandal of last summer, the eye-watering and unexpected prices charged to get tickets to the long-awaited return of Oasis. Well, today, the Competition and Markets Authority found that some tickets were offered at almost 2.5 times the price of others in the same area, despite not offering any extra benefits. The company selling them has now agreed to be more transparent in future. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports.
It was the ticket that everyone had battled to get their hands on, having endured hours in online queues, while these were the ones who succeeded. Many, of course, missed out, failing in their mission to see the Gallagher brothers finally reunite.
Well, some contemplated destroying their laptops out of frustration at the eye-watering prices. When everyone started comparing who had got what, there was outrage on social media that prices for the same area seemed to vary. Many had suspected algorithmic dynamic pricing had been used, but the Competition and Markets Authority found no evidence of that.
What the investigation did find was that Ticketmaster failed to tell fans that standing tickets were being sold at 2 different prices and that prices would jump as soon as the cheap tickets sold out. The so-called platinum tickets were sold at almost 2.5 times the price without sufficient explanation that they offered no additional benefits.
I never actually got anywhere near to the point where I could put anything in the basket, but the cheap tickets had already gone. We were into the £350 mark, maybe even more, which was a little off-putting, but I was thinking maybe pop on my credit card and pay it off over a period of time. But I think out of the group of friends, I think there was only 2 people who managed to get 2 Wembley tickets, and I think they paid over £500 each.
Ticketmaster has said it welcomes the confirmation that it didn't breach any consumer law over how it handled the Oasis ticket sale, but it has agreed with the CMA that from now on it will tell fans 24 hours in advance if a tiered pricing system is being used. It's also promised to give more information about the costs while fans are in online queues, so it doesn't come as a shock.
We're going to be monitoring compliance with these undertakings, and if we see any sign that they're not being complied with, we will not hesitate to take enforcement action.
As Oasis's reunion tour wraps up at Wembley this weekend, should the rumours be true and the band announce plans to recreate their iconic Nebworth gigs next year, it should at least mean that fans, if they can face putting themselves through the process again, won't be crying their hearts out. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the Times columnist and leader writer Sebastian Payne and the New Statesman's associate political editor Rachel Cunliffe. Welcome. Great to see both of you. So, more then on our lead story on digital ID cards, leading many of the newspapers, as you perhaps might expect. This is the Daily Mail's unenthusiastic take, one might say. Show us your digital papers there. Plenty on that to come after this.